Welcome into Second Down right here on ESPN Radio. Christian Gokel flying solo here on this Tuesday afternoon. Cam Urshery and PJ Zuko will be back tomorrow. We will catch up with the legendary Ben Troop, former Florida Gator All-American. And, of course, you hear him every afternoon right here on ESPN Radio from 3 to 6 on 3 and Out. We'll talk about what has been kind of the news of the day in the NFL. The brief but exciting tight end career for Tim Tebow has come to an end. 2021 to 2021. We appreciate all the content from Tim Tebow. We appreciate the funny videos of him attempting to block NFL defensive linemen. But the experiment in Jacksonville is over. Now we can get down to really the nitty gritty of it, which is at least through one preseason game, the Jacksonville Jaguars coaches are not doing Trevor Lawrence or any of the quarterbacks any favors with this offense so far. So maybe we can get away from Tim Tebow talk and starting quarterback talk and get into actually looking at what this Jacksonville Jaguars team can look like coming up in 2021, because I know it's only one preseason game and we can't garner too much from that. But what we saw wasn't great. So maybe now we can move away from the Tim Tebow stuff and start getting into some actual football. Have a lot to dive into here today. Atlanta Braves now a game and a half up in the NL East standings, but they're also going for another spot in Major League Baseball, which is that wild card spot. So even if the Braves don't win the East, because it's still really close, and the Braves kind of going through an easy portion of the schedule right now, while the Phillies, who are in second place, are going through a really tough portion. Even if they don't win the East, the Braves now are trying to play catch up for that second wild card spot. You're not catching the Dodgers. The Dodgers have a 99.99%, like literally a 99.99% chance of making the playoffs. But all of a sudden, the Padres, playing in that really brutal NL West, have become a team that you could probably go and get. The Braves currently 63-56. The Padres 67-54. So in that win column, only 4 spots ahead of you right now. The Braves, I think, have a legitimate shot at least getting one of those wild card spots, which just a month ago seemed absurd. But I want to start in, the natural place here today, talking about Colin Cowherd. Obviously, Colin Cowherd, one of the best in the business. Following is substantial and really a guy I was listening to when I started wanting to do this. There's a few of them out there, but Colin Cowherd was a guy I consume a lot. So listening to his show today, curious about what he would have to say about Tim Tebow, and it kind of went all over the place. There was some comparing Tim Tebow to the way America is reacting to COVID-19, which I think is interesting, but also Tim Tebow's place in the SEC. And then it transitioned from talking about Tim Tebow. He called Tim Tebow the greatest player in SEC history, which I've said before. I think Tim Tebow is the greatest quarterback in college football history, period. You'd have to give me a minute to think about greatest player in SEC history. I mean, 2 national championships, Heisman Trophy, really kind of defined the 2000s for SEC football. So I need a minute on that. But I'll definitely say greatest quarterback. Like if you say Johnny Manziel, come on. Tim Tebow won championships at a super high level. Joe Burrow had the greatest season, but we're talking career. Again, 2 national championships for Tim Tebow there. And honestly, I'd say Cam Newton right there with Joe Burrow in terms of a single season. So I wanted to read a few things that Colin Cowherd had to say, because he kind of started going after the SEC in terms of their production of NFL players. He says, if college football was the NFL, then why have the last 10 quarterbacks who have played in the Super Bowl, none have been from the SEC? The 14 quarterbacks who made the playoffs last year, none were from the SEC. That's Saturday football. The last 5 MVPs of the NFL were quarterbacked by a Cal quarterback, Louisville, Texas Tech, Michigan, and Boston College. Now, if Colin wanted to go back one more year, in 2015, Cam Newton won the MVP, but I guess that didn't really fit the narrative, so you couldn't go back one more year than that. But I see his point. It's just that opening statement. If college football was the NFL is not just quarterbacks. Is quarterback the most important position? Absolutely. Is quarterback the most important position of any sport anywhere? Absolutely. It's not all quarterback, though. You know me. I said it many times. I start at the line of scrimmage. Like if you want to determine a really good football team, I start at the line of scrimmage. That's why I think in college football, you never saw Patrick Mahomes competing at an elite level in terms of wins and losses, right? It's why you haven't seen a ton of these quarterbacks that he was referencing compete at an elite level. That's why Lamar Jackson, they won a lot of football games, but you never thought of them as Louisville as the best team in the country, right? To me, it starts at the line of scrimmage. So when you say if college football was the NFL, college football is the NFL. I think there's a maybe 4 or 5 guys in the NFL right now who didn't play college football, and a few of them are punters, I think, from Australia. And so there are a few players, but a vast majority of the NFL is college football. But I see what he's saying with the results, the SEC or the ACC, and throw in Ohio State every now and then, win national championships, and that's about it. And we can honestly say it's Alabama, and then every now and then LSU will sneak up there. Clemson and Ohio State win national championships. Why aren't we seeing those quarterbacks make the playoffs? Ohio State, if you just want to come at the SEC, Ohio State, who's the last great Ohio State quarterback in the NFL? It's not Cardell Jones. I think Braxton Miller pretty much tried out as a wide receiver, and that never really got off the ground. But going back to the SEC, I think it's a fair point. As recently as 2013, you had Nick Marshall and James Franklin as the starting quarterbacks in the SEC championship game. You had a former defensive back from Georgia who transferred to Auburn as the starting quarterback in the SEC championship game, go on to win that game and then lose to Jameis Winston in Florida State in the 2013 BCS National Championship game. But again, in the SEC championship game, think about some of the quarterbacks we've had in the SEC championship game recently. In the SEC championship game, you had Nick Marshall and James Franklin. I think James Franklin went on to have a good, I think he actually might still be playing Canadian football right now, but never did anything in the NFL. That's where the SEC was. Alabama won a national championship in 2015 with Jake Coker as their starting quarterback. And think about the quarterbacks we've had come through Alabama since then. You had Jake Coker as your starting quarterback in the national championship, and you beat Deshaun Watson and Clemson. But I think the SEC has really started to transition away from that. And maybe it was because the SEC was the last conference to get on board with the spread up tempo offenses, right? Like you had LSU and Alabama in a national championship in the not too distant past where it was still I formation, power I football, where it was still 21-0 and it was just pounding the rock down your throat. And you didn't have any semblance of an RPO, bubble screens, anything like that, right? Even Gus Malzahn, who was really an innovator, kind of came in and his offense became kind of old school, right? Now you've really, I think, started to see that transition. So what I would say to Colin Cowherd is when you're going at the SEC like this, look at who the NFL has been picking the last few years. Joe Burrow is the starting quarterback and was the first overall pick, right? And had arguably the greatest season in college football history passing wise. Mac Jones just got picked up by the Patriots. Jalen Hurts right now is the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. At least as of right now, is the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Tua is the starting quarterback right now for the Miami Dolphins. So in the past, has there been one position where the SEC was lacking? Absolutely. 1,000%. I would give you quarterback that the SEC had been lacking. And maybe kicker, because I think most SEC fans out there, you're usually pretty skittish around your kicker. So I'd give you kicker and quarterback. But, man, talk about the defensive backs, the offensive linemen, the defensive linemen, the linebackers that the SEC has put into the league. Talk about the wide receivers that the SEC has put into the league. So when you say Saturdays aren't Sundays, I would say a vast majority of the big playmakers come from just a few conferences, and a majority of those come from the SEC. So I think it's an interesting thought. And, yeah, quarterback play in the not too distant past in the SEC was not great. I would also argue one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time in Peyton Manning came out of the SEC. So maybe there was just that kind of 15, 20-year lull there where you weren't producing great NFL talent, and you've had some of the busts like Jamarcus Russell there in the past. But the SEC is pretty good. And then when you look at it this year, Matt Corral, in my opinion, is going to be a top 10 pick. And if he's not, It's not because he doesn't deserve to be. It's because maybe teams are looking at different styles of quarterback. Like I think Malik Willis is going to be a guy out of Liberty who's going to be a really high draft pick. And obviously Spencer Rattler is going to be a really high draft pick. But Matt Corral is a top 10 talent. A lot of people argue that JT Daniels is a top 10 talent. He's at least a first round pick at quarterback. Bryce Young is going to be that type of quarterback. And then you just look at some of the guys that the SEC schools have brought in. I think now you're starting to see that the quarterbacks who in the past had picked Big 12 and Big 10 and Pac 12 schools because of how wide open the offenses were. Listen, if my kid is a 5-star quarterback 5 years ago, I'm saying don't go to the SEC. Why would you go to the SEC? The offensive coordinators there aren't really preparing you for Sundays. And look at what you have to play against. And I understand, oh, you got to be a competitor, go play against the best guy. I want to give my kid the best shot to get to the next level. Why would I tell my kid to go to the SEC when you can go to the Big 12, play against zero defense, and put up 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns every year? And if you go to Oklahoma, you're going to go to New York as a Heisman Trophy finalist. My kid was a 5-star quarterback 5 years ago. Why am I telling him to go to the SEC? But now you have that track record over these past 5 or 6 years of quarterback development, of bringing in Joe Burrow from Ohio State and turning him into what he is now. JT Daniels coming from USC to Georgia. Alabama recruiting these guys, recruiting Jalen Hurts, recruiting Tua, and sending them on to the next level. So thought it was an interesting thought there from Colin Cowherd, but I kind of disagree. He did go on to try to go after some of the bigger conferences with wide receivers. He said the greatest wide receivers I ever seen went to Mississippi Valley State and Jerry Rice, Tennessee Chattanooga and Terrell Owens, and Marshall and Randy Moss. All right, well, now we're getting into 30, 40, 50-year-old references. I think college football's changed a little bit since then. So, yeah, Tim Tebow was an NFL quarterback. I will say this, he got a playoff win before Matt Ryan ever did, but he wasn't an NFL quarterback. And I think it was proven time and time again. I give the guy credit. He wanted to go out there and make it as an NFL tight end, got thrown around by defensive linemen for 5 or 6 weeks, and then got cut. He still went out there and played, so I'll give him credit for that. I think we all kind of knew how that one was going to end. But again, Colin Cowherd taking a shot at the SEC quarterback play. I'd say give it 2 or 3 more years, and you'll probably have 3 or 4 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL being guys that came out of the SEC. We got so much more to come to here on Second Down. Again, getting back into Braves talk. Also, we'll talk a little bit about patience. It's an important trait to have, especially if you're a sport fan, and one that all too often we let go by the wayside. So we'll dive into a little bit of patience as well. And again, coming up at 2:30, we'll catch up with Ben Troop. We'll talk about all about the NFL tight end situation there with Tim Tebow and what it's really like to go up and block against defensive linemen. Because if you think about some of the guys just in his division when he played for the Titans that Ben Troop had to go up and block against, the Robert Mathises, the Dwight Freeneys, and that's just on one team. I'm really looking forward to this conversation coming up with Ben. So we got so much more to come. Stick around. If you miss any portion of the show, check it out on ESPNcoastal.com or Spotify. We'll be right back after this. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source, 2 different locations in Savannah to take care of all of your uniform needs. So much to get to here on ESPN Radio today. 3 and Out coming up next. We'll catch up with Rich Stiles from the Back Nine Boys. He'll break down what was a huge win for Kevin Kisner over the weekend. 0-5 previously in playoff holes. Got that win, though, and now pushing for a spot on that Ryder Cup team. So we'll catch up with Rich Stiles about that. Also coming up at 3:35, one of the best in the business, John Nelson from GPB Sports. It is officially game week for Georgia high school football. We'll have games that count coming up on Friday. So we'll dive into all the news from our local areas with John Nelson from GPB Sports coming up here at 3:35. Stick around in about 10 minutes. We'll catch up with Ben Troop, and he'll dive into all of the Tim Tebow news and just kind of the breakdown from those plays that went viral over the weekend of Tim Tebow struggling a little bit there to block some NFL defensive linemen. So we'll dive into all of that. But as I mentioned, high school football coming up this week. We want to hear from you. 912-342-7184 is the phone number. Again, 912-342-7184 is the phone number. Also, you can send us a message on Twitter at ESPN Coastal, at ESPN Coastal. What is the most dominating performance you have ever seen from a high school football player? Because there have been some dudes that have come out of just this South Georgia coastal region, and really now the recruiting starting to pick up. But we want to know, again, 912-342-7184 or at ESPN Coastal on Twitter. You can comment. We're streaming live on Facebook right now as well. What is the most dominating performance you have ever seen from a high school football player? And just locally over the past few years, a couple names that come to mind for me. Sam Brown from New Hampstead, who is now up at West Virginia, actually one of 3 guys from South Georgia that are up at West Virginia right now playing wide receiver. Sam Brown against Pierce County a couple years back was one of the most unstoppable football players I have ever seen. And then another one, Otis Reese, the safety, originally committed to Georgia, now is at Ole Miss. I think he's still at Ole Miss. In the playoffs, 6A semifinals against Glenn Academy. Glenn Academy had a big lead in that game, and they just turned Otis Reese loose. Like, there was no coaching anymore. It was Otis Reese, you're a 5-star safety, blitz off the edge, just go get the ball. It was unbelievable to watch. So again, 912-342-7184 is the phone line, or at tweet us at ESPN Coastal. What is the most dominant performance from a high school athlete you have ever seen? We want to hear from you because we got some big games coming up this Friday night. Speaking of games, ESPN Coastal's high school game of the week will be kicking off coming up on Friday. PJ Zuko on the call. You can watch live on ESPNCoastal.com or our YouTube. We have live football for you coming up on Friday night. Windsor Forest, New Hampstead from Pooler Stadium. PJ Zuko again will be on the call coming up on Friday night on ESPN High School Game Day, fueled by InMarket. Mentioned patience at the end of the last segment, and when you talk about fans, our good friend Brooks Austin, I thought, made a good point yesterday. Fan comes from the word fanatic, which is fanatical. Not a whole lot of reasoning to it, right? You're the reason why you're. And again, I'm a fan of a lot of teams, and I don't have the best thought process and the most patience with a lot of these teams. But fans are the reason why sports are so big, why I'm doing this right now. Fans and patience don't typically mix. And this isn't just now, instant gratification in sports, right? I'll say, let's go to college football, for example. College football, I think, is one of the most beautiful things because you lose one game for the most part. You lose one game, and that's it. 365 more days until your season starts, and you can try again next year. You lose one game, and it's over. So I think that's where a lot of the desperation and anxiety comes from college football fans. Is you lose 2 games, we're our program's not on the right track. We got to make a change. Something's wrong. I think patience is an underrated quality, maybe not for fans to have, because fans are fanatical. They're never going to have that quality, but it's a huge, huge quality for the actual decision makers on your team to have. Does that mean the coach? Maybe. It can be sometimes you're too patient, where you leave a guy in for too long before you make a change to that position, or you stick it out with that guy and he turns into one of the best to do it, right? Patience, it can be a big thing. I'm speaking right now more from the owner, GM, athletic director perspective. Patience is such a big part of sports, and we see it time and time again where when you're patient and you trust a process, obviously there has to be an evaluation point every single year to make sure you're maintaining some level of standard. I'm not saying it falls off a cliff and you just stick with it, but if they're maintaining some level of standard and they're meeting your expectations, patience is huge. And I think there's a few interesting examples. One from this year, how about the first place team in the NL East? How about the Atlanta Braves? Maybe don't raise your hand in the car, or raise one hand in the car, keep one hand on the wheel. If you were ready to fire Brian Snitker, if you were, and this is like, just if any of these apply to you, if you were ready to fire Brian Snitker, if you were ready to fire Alex Anthopoulos, if you were ready to trade Freddie Freeman, if you were ready to trade Charlie Morton, if you at some point this season, and again, recency bias, if at some point this season you were ready to give up on Austin Riley, if you didn't think Dansby Swanson was the answer at shortstop, patience. I'm going to trust Brian Snitker, a guy who's been doing this for 40, almost 50 years and doing it at a very high level. I'll trust Brian Snitker. Am I still a little bit sketchy on Will Smith when he puts two runners on every single time he has to close out a game? 1,000%. But I'm going to trust Snit. And I think patience is a huge thing. And we kind of forget where these guys started, where Brian Snitker took over for Freddie Gonzalez after Freddie Gonzalez. We've had like a 19-38 start. That's what he inherited. And now, look, last year you're playing in the NLCS and you're a game away from going to the World Series. So I think patience is huge, not just with him. Dabo Swinney. A lot of people would argue after Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney is the best coach in college football. And I think the success would indicate it. I don't think there has been, since the first year, I don't think there has been a college football playoff that didn't include Clemson. But prior to that, Dabo Swinney was known for what? Clemsoning. Right? He'd win 9-10 games. They'd win an ACC championship, but they'd lose the one they shouldn't lose. They lose to Pitt, right? They'd lose the one they weren't supposed to lose, and that would keep them from reaching their ultimate goal. If you thought Dabo Swinney was holding you back and you're ready to fire him after 2013 or 2014, well, all of a sudden you're missing out on a couple national championships. I think patience is a huge thing. Bobby Bowden, quickly here. Bobby Bowden didn't win 10 games. Florida State didn't win 10 games from 1981 to 1986. Well, listen, man, you got Florida State. You built it up to this big thing. You have us tasting success for the first time ever, but man, you're just not getting it done for 5 years, 6 years. He then won at least 10 games for the next 14 years. So I think patience is a massive thing inside of sports where obviously, again, there is a threshold you have to meet, but I think sometimes sticking it out with your guy can be a hugely important thing. And I think we're seeing that right now with the Atlanta Braves. Got more to get to here. Ben Troop coming up next. We'll dive into everything Tim Tebow and tight end position next with the great Ben Troop right here on Second Down. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source. Christian Gokel, glad to have you alongside here on this Tuesday afternoon, and pleased to be joined by our next guest. I love talking football, and honestly, I think the best show that we do isn't on the air. It's in the office when we just because some words start getting thrown around that can't make it on the air. You'd have to buy Sirius XM to hear those, but the truth comes out when you're in the office talking football. So happy to be joined. My good friend, Ben Troop. Ben, the news today, heartbreaking to a lot of Florida fans all over the South. Tim Tebow is no longer a Jacksonville Jaguar. First of all, I just have to ask, are you okay?
Oh, I'm good. I mean, Christian, I'm going to say this, man. I'm going to say this. I know we make a lot of jokes, and when it comes to Tim Tebow, but you said this, right? When it first happened, you was like, dude, what are we doing? He's not gonna make it, right? But this is the thing. I kind of fell into that, okay, maybe I can give him the benefit of the doubt because of who he is. But isn't that why it's so hard to evaluate Tebow? Because we can't separate who he is and what he's doing. Like, top 10 human being of all time. He's probably going to be in the running for it. I get it. But he finally realized that the game of football is humbling. What we saw is who he is. And that's not even against the starters. That's against guys who probably aren't even going to be on NFL rosters, come the regular season. So Urban Meyer has learned two things real quick. One, this ain't college no more. Two, you will not reshape or, the rules have already been set. That's probably – and the thing is, I'm pretty sure Urban Meyer told him, but they was like, dude, we can't put that kind of stuff out there on tape like that. We want other tight ends that want to come here and play. So Tebow, it was short-lived. He's the only fourth-string tight end I've ever seen to get this much publicity. But Christian, just like I know, just like the press conference, just like the backup quarterback press conference with the New York Jets, just like, everything, just like when he had his baseball career, Tebow, it's over. Move on. He will be at SEC Network probably sometime this fall.
Oh, no, he's going to land on his feet for sure. But I'm curious how you experienced all this because you're a tight end who played the position at the highest level, but you're also a bleed orange and blue Florida Gator, like lose all sense of I don't want to say lose all sense of pride, but just lose all sense of just caring about what people think about you when you talk about Florida, right? There's no reason. It's just, I love Florida, get out of my face, right? Mm-hmm. So tight end at the highest level, unashamed Florida fan. How did you experience Tim Tebow trying to play the position that you played at the highest level? Were you kind of like, get out of here, man? Or was it like, come on, Tim, you can do it?
It was more of, I would go with A. Because once again, the longer I've been in media, the more I realized, Christian, my orange and blue glasses get me in trouble more often than not, right? And and whatever team you root for. But this guy was in Florida in 2009. Most of these guys on the team grew up watching Tim Tebow, and their parents said, hey, get up there and clean. It's been since he's been there. But as far as the tight end position, if I try to play the quarterback position, how is it gonna look? If I try to play the defensive end position, how is it gonna look? Just because I'm fit and can do it doesn't mean I'm gonna do it at the highest level. So Tebow, Urban Meyer embarrassed you in a way because the way you got to try out, I ain't never heard of that. Y'all obviously best friends, which happens. Cronyism, it happens. I get that part. But Christian, at a certain point, what's the song go? You gotta know when to hold them, gotta know when to fold them. And I think what happens in this situation is Tim Tebow had just killed every dream for every player who's right now at the gym saying, "Baby, I'm telling you, they're gonna give me a call." Football, just like media, just like anything you want to do, if you're not doing it day in and day out, you're not gonna listen. There are players who have played football their whole life who's not gonna make the team, and they played the same position their whole life. They're not going to make it. Some of these guys, they last football they're ever going to play. They're doing it right now. And Tim Tebow got a chance again. And that's the thing, too, Christian, because he was out there with just guys who trying to make the team, you got exposed. Bad. I'm talking about these dudes out here make you look. And listen, when that running back looked at Tebow, the only reason why he ain't snapped is because it's Tebow. He like, dude, what is it? So, look, Christian, I want to apologize to you. Two things. One, when it came to the XFL, you wasn't here for it. I'm tired of this. It's cool. Number two, Tim Tebow. But you are. Listen, when it comes to nonsense,
I don't want to be that guy. I feel like I gotta be that guy.
It's not so much you that guy. You just break it up. You're like, could y'all break that up over there, please? Could y'all stop? Like, please, man. Like, this is basically we have become the guys you try to avoid when you're not at work. Hey, Christian, how you feel about look. I give my takes and I move on. I am not the gatekeeper of these takes. Leave me alone, please. And when you say I'm not gonna deal with y'all, I have to deal with them out there. I will not bring it into this office. But Tebow, hey man, like Rocky, what? It's like 30 Rockies. Rocky's done. Okay, you're done too. That's it. No more Tebow mania. It's over.
All right, so I want to talk to you about the tight end position because I don't think we give it enough credit. Like, we like talking about the Travis Kelce's and the George Kittles because obviously they're amazing at their job, but I think we think they're so good, one, because of the receiving stats, right? Like, we can see the stats on our fantasy football team. We're like, this guy is awesome. It's kind of like the same with Darren Waller. And then we also have people tell us how good they are. And so, like, the certain guys that we follow on Twitter, if they tell us somebody's good, we're like, all right, well, he's good. And I'm going to tell everybody how good he is. I think Tim Tebow kind of exposed a couple of things. To be a tight end, you have to be a really good NFL wide receiver, and you also have to be a pretty good NFL offensive tackle. And you have to be able to play in and play out, switch up between those two positions.
Yes, you have to be grimy. You have to be grimy as a blocker, and you have to be skilled as a receiver. Blocking does not take skill. Blocking is a want-to thing. Like, look, dude, blocking is football one-on-one. Blocking is, hey, dude, I've been in the weight room. You've been in the weight room. We finna see. They finna snap this ball, and we finna see, right? Skill set comes in when it's like, okay, now I might be giving up athleticism because I'm going up against a linebacker. I got more size on the safety. I'm not as fast as a DB. But it doesn't matter, right? When they throw Travis Kelce the ball, get open. I don't care who it is. George Kittle and even though Noah Fant and those guys and Hawkinson and the list goes on and on. But what Tebow realizes this: a lot happens in one play. You know what happens in those plays, Christian, that Tebow didn't have? Instincts. When you've played the position so long, your instincts kick in. Hey man, on this play, if people knew how many things going on in somebody's mind, all right, if they come off the blitz, I'm the high. Okay, if they try to bring all this we're little computers processing. Tim Tebow is saying, oh my God, where is the guy I'm supposed to be blocking? Like, where is he? Right? Where is he? Do I block him on my left shoulder or my right shoulder? You know what I'm saying? Do I try to get to it? Do I try to get to his inside hip or his outside hip? Do I take an inside step or an outside? All these things go on, and Tebow is like, I'm just trying to know what I know. When that guy ran from Tebow, he's like, oh my God, I'm chasing him. Are you chasing him, or should you just watch him down? So that's what the tight end position has really come. The Kyle Pitts is the culmination. He been birthed from Kittle and Kelce and Gonzalez and Sharp and Gates. They birthed this young man named Kyle Pitts. But for me, the gold standard at the position is Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce plays a position like you're only gonna watch him play one time. That's how he plays. Like, you may never watch me but one time, and every game he gonna give you something. But Christian, it's the hit position on offense. The tight end position on offense is equivalent to the star position or the slot receiver or slot corner or the outside linebacker position on defense. You can do a lot with a tight end that's grimy and skilled. Now, if he's just grimy, if he's just skilled, so I think no more one-trick ponies. Christian, it's like when we talking to these players now. What can you do? I play football. Okay, I don't want to hear. I know you're gonna specialize in one thing more than the other, but can you play? Griminess is when it's 3rd and 1, and you saying, Coach, please run to my side. But that dude right there, he don't get. Listen, the hardest yard you get is what everybody. 1 yard is the hardest yard you get, and that's football. When it's like, Chris, you come in, you give it a play, fellas. Listen, what? We finna go straight wham. What? Just straight downhill, no sugarcoating. Listen, in the I formation. But if I would have understood how blocking makes a tight end better, I would have been a better player. Because George Kittle showed me that, look, dude, the better you are blocking, now the defensive ends don't want no problem. You know how easy of a release you're gonna get? They don't want to deal with you. But yeah, the tight end position is it. There used to be a time the way you try to, get slimmer in the offseason because you want to play receiver. Them guys eat a little bit more carbs, Christian. They're trying to get up to 240, 255.
About it. No, I want to ask you before you go, because I know you have to go. I hop on with BJ and Ben, or BJ and Kevin for 3 and Out. But Tim Tebow had a couple of plays on film that were the plays where you go back in to watch the tape where you slide down in your chair a little bit before that play happens. I'm curious for you, when you played for the Titans and you're playing against some really good defensive ends, did anyone ever embarrass you on a play like that?
Yeah. So this is the thing. I got embarrassed by Dwight Freeney. You know how like
I think a lot of people got embarrassed by
yeah,
Dwight
yeah.
Freeney.
But this is the thing though. So it was one of those places where wherever he lines up, I line up right on his outside hip. But I got my front foot up like I'm finna go out for a pass, and I'm just gonna drive him down. It's the good old down and around. You're gonna have two guys coming down, and you're gonna have the tackle. He's coming out pulling. Dwight Freeney knew what I was doing. You know why? Because before the snap of the ball, I looked at him, and he looked at me. He got his hands great. Go, what you looking at me for? Okay, I see what's coming. What he did before the snap of the ball, on the snap, he pushed me. So instead of me pushing it down, he pushes me out. And by pushing me out, I messed up the freaking track of the freaking tackle. So the tackle's got to, he got to go out there. He blew this play up so bad that he blew the play up so bad that he was laughing. Like he's laughing during the play. And he said, Troop, if you wouldn't have looked at me, I said, it's because I looked at you. He says, it's not that you was looking this way. You was looking at me. I'm like, what you looking at me for? You ain't looking at an alignment. Christian, it was so embarrassed. It's one of those things to where you try to go to the bathroom for, hey, man, I got to go. No, don't go to the bathroom. We want you to see this. Football is humbling, man. That's why, you hope you to hammer more than the nail. But yeah, Mr. Dwight Freeney, I mean, if he saw me right now, he'll probably just bust out laughing. He'll be like, as you learn. And I learned, don't look at the guy. You got to block. Unless he's right in front of you. Yeah, man, that was embarrassing, man. The coach let the whole team look at it, too. He let the whole team see it.
That's awesome. All right, Kevin's yelling at me. Go hop on the phone with him. We appreciate it. You can listen to Ben coming up here in about 15 minutes on 3 and Out. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you, sir.
We got more to come here on Second Down. We'll be right back after this. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source, with 2 different locations in Savannah to take care of all of your uniform needs. Really appreciate Ben Troop hopping on there just to talk some NFL tight end talk. You'll hear more from him coming up here in about 10 minutes on 3 and Out. Also with Kevin Thomas and BJ Bennett. They're going to be joined in the first hour by John Nelson from GPB Sports. We are just, a few days away now from high school football. Friday night, kicking off the season here in the state of Georgia. John Nelson will break all that down. And again, our question of the day: what is the most dominating high school football performance you have ever seen from a player? 912-342-7184. We're taking your calls. Also, you can tweet us at ESPN Coastal as well. So much to dive into. We're going to have a battle of 2 huge brands coming up on September 4th. And yeah, Georgia and Clemson. But now we have the quarterback battle of Zaxby's and Bojangles. For those of you who missed the news, a couple weeks ago, DJ Uiagalelei, the quarterback for Clemson, signs a deal with Bojangles, also signed a deal with Dr. Pepper. So just, my man has impeccable taste. But so he signed that deal with Bojangles. JT Daniels today, Georgia starting quarterback, announced a deal with Zaxby's, the franchise fried chicken brand based out of Athens. And listen, you bring me a box of Bojangles, you bring me a box of Zaxby's, I'm not going to have a problem with it. So 2 huge brands going up against each other. Zaxby's versus Bojangles there in the Duke's Mayo Kickoff Classic in Charlotte. So just all kinds of brands. Welcome to NIL deals all over the place. So we'll break that down more. Some NFL news, local news to dive into that's not Tim Tebow. The Atlanta Falcons announced to ESPN that they have reached 100% vaccination on their team. That's coaches and players. They are believed to be the first NFL team that have reached that threshold. And with the different criteria that vaccinated versus unvaccinated players in the NFL have to go to, I don't think it's too big of a stretch to call this a competitive advantage for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, is it going to equal a playoff appearance? Probably not. But could it keep you out of a lot of touchy situations where you have the contact tracing and you have players who have to fly in different planes, which as of right now, some of these guys can't work out together on teams that have guys who are unvaccinated. They can't work out together. They can practice together. They can't work out together. They have to wear the wristbands that designate them as unvaccinated. So again, right now, the Atlanta Falcons are the first team, or believed to be the first team in the NFL, to reach 100% vaccination. And again, I think it's a pretty big competitive advantage if you're in the NFL and you have that versus some of the teams like Washington that are struggling to get some of those numbers up. So obviously we're going to dive into that more coming up here on 3 and Out, because I think it could have a pretty significant impact coming up on the season there. Again, if you miss any portion of the show, check it out on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. John Nelson, GPB Sports, coming up at 3:35, and then we'll catch up with Rich Stiles from the Back Nine Boys. Kevin Kisner wins the Wyndham Championship over the weekend. He was 0-5 in playoffs prior to that, but able to sink a birdie putt and win the tournament. And now that puts him in a good position to make his first ever Ryder Cup team, which I think is awesome. If you follow golf, Kevin Kisner plays golf obviously a lot better, but I think just kind of approaches the game a lot like you and your buddies approach a game when you go out and play golf. It's not overly serious. He kind of realizes he's playing a game for a living, and he has a whole lot of fun with it. One of the better guys on the PGA Tour. So really cool to see him win. And now, again, it would be really cool to see him represent the United States in the Ryder Cup. So we'll catch up with Rich Stiles from the Back Nine Boys coming up in about 2 hours here on ESPN Radio. He'll dive into all that. Also, we're going to ask Rich, and we're curious to get y'all's input on this as well. If you took every golfer ever in their prime and gave them all the same equipment, and say we put them out on, I don't know, we'll say Augusta, or is Augusta a little bit too much of a course that plays to certain skill sets? Say Bay Hill. We'll put them out on Bay Hill. Every golfer in their prime, and they all get to use the same equipment, same golf balls. Who's the best golfer ever? Who would win that tournament? We're going to ask Rich Styles, but we also want y'all's input on that as well. So tweet at us at ESPN Coastal. Let us know who you think. Again, all equipment's the same. They're all playing in their prime, all playing on the same course. Who's the best golfer ever? Does it work out to where it's the guy who can just, is it a guy like Tiger who could just drive it 340 yards? And obviously every other part of his game was amazing. Or is Jack Nicklaus, you give him some of the modern equipment, or Arnold Palmer, you give him some of the modern equipment. Are they right there with those guys? I think it's a pretty interesting question. We're going to ask Rich Styles about that coming up at 4:20 as well. So much to get to coming up. Brad Crawford from 247 ranked his 10 best BCF and playoff era champions. I think a pretty surprising team at number 1 and at number 3. So we'll dive into that coming up here in a little while as well. Again, Christian Gokel here flying solo today. So much to dive into coming up this week. Later on this Friday, PJ Zuko will have ESPN High School Game Day, first broadcast of the year, fueled by In-Market. That will be between Windsor Forest and New Hampstead, coming to you from Pooler Stadium. But so excited to kick off the high school football season. And now we're just 18 days away now from the kickoff of SEC football, ACC football there. Georgia, Clemson, Miami, Alabama, 18 days away from college football. So excited for that. We really appreciate everybody hanging out with us today. If you miss any portion of the show, check it out on ESPNcoastal.com. We'll have all of our full archives of our shows. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, Kevin Thomas coming up next on 3 and Out.